We have quite a few items on today's agenda. And before we dig in, I just want to share a few thoughts with you. One is that you can tell the acoustics are not the greatest here. So if you're having conversations in the back, like those that are conversing now, it's hard to hear the speaker. When you do come to the microphone, give us your name and address, and we would appreciate that. If there is something you want to add, we would love to hear it. If the person before you has already stated what you wanted to say, it's okay to say, I agree with the previous speaker, and then give us any additional information. If we keep hearing the same thing over and over again, we get the picture. We'll be here a pretty long time. So I want to thank you for your cooperation in that effort. Today we have several guests who are helping our great city. We have commissioners who are stepping up and volunteering to fill that function. And Councilmember Kikorin will be asking Mr. Justin Kim if he can come to the microphone. And Mr. Kim, I want to thank you for making the trip here. You actually got parking, made it to this room. That's an accomplishment in and of itself. But I do want to thank you for being here and just to share a little bit about yourself. And this is, you're going from an area planning commission to citywide commission, am I correct?
Yes.
Could you please give us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be in this role and what do you want to walk away with when it's done?
Okay. My name is Justin Kim. I'm a commercial appraiser by trade. I lived in the city of LA for more than 30 years. When I immigrated my family, again, about 30 years ago. I've served with the mayor for the past 6 years as a Disabled Access Appeal Commissioner and also as a Central Area Planning Commissioner, now the City Planning Commissioner. What I bring to the table is, again, my knowledge of City of LA as an appraiser. I know what a good neighborhood, again, sustains the value of a City of LA. I have a specific knowledge of a lot of neighborhoods. More importantly, as a serving as a commissioner, I do have a new profound respect for all the elected officials because there's some tough choices you have to make. That's what I gained for the past about 6 years.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kim. I see from your resume that you've also served as an expert witness to the Federal Bankruptcy Court and to the Tax Appeals Board of Orange County. So obviously, your integrity and your objectivity is much desired in these cases as we analyze these issues. Colleagues, any questions for Mr. Kim? Sir?
I've had the pleasure of already having met with Mr. Kim, and I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me about your vision for the city and for your role in the Planning Commission. It was a pleasure to get to know you, and I'm looking forward to being able to work closely with you, and I want to thank you for your willingness to serve in this regard. You mentioned that there are a number of difficult choices before us, and you're certainly right about that. For myself, one of the ways that I'm guided in making those decisions is by listening to the people in our different communities, in our different neighborhoods, and especially being respectful of the role that our neighborhood councils have played throughout the city. And I'd like to know what your thoughts are about the appropriate role that neighborhood councils play in making larger planning decisions.
Again, getting different views, ideas from neighborhood council, I think they're very important. What I learned is you have to listen to all different sides and different opinions as well. Again, tough choices. Okay, that's what I learned. But you have to make sure unbiased opinions and just make the right choice for the city of LA.
Thank you.
Mr. Kim, any questions, Councilman? I'd like to move to approve Mr. Kim for the position of Citywide Commission. We have a second? So it's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Kim. We'll be seeing you in front of the City Council very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Our next is Mr. Robert Lezen. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
We had an opportunity to speak to each other before, and I want to thank you for your work in this great city. I understand you also were a commissioner for the LA Convention and Exhibition Center Authority, and homegrown from Los Angeles, I believe.
Yes, I am.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and why you want to be in this position?
I am a long-term Los Angeles resident, most of my life, born in the area, lived in the Valley for the last 50 years. I have worked my way up through my organization and spent a lot of time on boards and on trusts where I have to deal with consultants and attorneys and bring together consensus and try to bring together the right solution to the problems. So that's sort of my background.
Well, thank you, sir. Any questions from my colleagues? Nope. Okay. I'd like to recommend you to that position, sir. That would be an action. Have a second on that? Okay. It's unanimous. And I'd like to remind you, sir, the conflict of interest forms, they should be submitted to City Ethics if you haven't done so already.
I have done that.
Great. Then you'll be recommended by this committee, and we hope to see you in the council floor very soon.
Thank you very
Is
much.
there a date, Mr. Clerk?
The 6th.
The 6th, you got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to ask Mr. George.
Hovagimian.
Hovagimian. Thank you, sir.
Got stuck on my last name again.
I didn't want to butcher the last name.
Don't worry about it.
When I
sir.
get past 3 syllables, I get in trouble.
Don't worry
Just
about it.
kidding. But I want to thank you for your time. We had a chance to speak in my office, and your sense of urgency and desire to help the city is greatly appreciated. And I just want to offer the opportunity to give us a little bit about your background and what you would like to walk away with from this experience.
My name is George Hovagimian, and I live in the city of Los Angeles in the Valley area. I've been living in Los Angeles for the past 35 years. I'm a mechanical engineer. I have a bachelor's degree in engineering. I have a graduate studies I've done in aerospace engineering, and I've been practicing engineering for over 35 years. So my experience goes from like engineering, planning, project management, alternative energy, green energy, energy conservation. And I've been working from small project from like a single residence up to like planning part of a city. So I do have a vast experience in different areas, in different positions, in different kind of engineering.
Now, in this role in housing and development and planning and zoning, in terms of your background, can you share with me a little bit of what you would like to walk away with once you're done with this experience? What kinds of changes or impacts you see yourself having as a planning commissioner?
First of all, I would like to bring my expertise and capacity in my education and my experience over 35 years in serving the Planning Commission in any areas that it needs to be done. And when I walk away, I would like to see positive things implemented in the Planning Commission. Like, when we met the first time, you asked me that what would I like to see when I walk away. I said that my destination when I came to this country was Los Angeles. And Los Angeles was the destination of all businesses, all people, all educators, all, people that they wanted to live. And I would like, when I live, I would like to see that the Los Angeles stars shine again, that Los Angeles is being the destination sought by many businesses and communities, like being in Los Angeles again. We do have a very tough competition in different cities in the state, in the city, but I'd like to see Los Angeles back on top of again.
Well, sir, I'd like to thank you for your energy, the positive attitude, and the great intentions. We need to continue building up the city in a manner we can create jobs, as well as making it livable and understand the quality of life, and for that I thank you. And as a fellow Bruin, hopefully nobody holds that against you. I want to thank you for your great work. Council colleagues? Okay, don't suffer too much, Paul. So we have a second, if there are any other questions? Have a second, it'll be unanimous. Thank you, sir, for your time. Look forward to seeing you on the council floor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, that takes care of the first three items. What I'd like to do is go over the items that are scheduled for continuance or that just need a quick technical review. We do have a few items that have quite a few cards. Maybe item number 4 has quite a few cards, so we will call that special. Number 5, I believe, we can move forward. The only card here is in support, and unless the council staff wants to speak on this, but item number 5, we can move forward. Do you feel compelled to speak, sir? No? Okay. So we can move item 5. Have a second on that? Okay. Item 6, we don't have any cards on 6. On 6, we'll call special. There's quite a few cards on 6. We'll take that back. So 6, we'll call special. 7, we can move on consent, if in agreement with my colleagues. Number 8, we can continue and plumb to April 12th, and council hopefully April 27th. Number 9, we can continue for 30 days, I believe. Is that accurate? 30 days for number 9. Number 10 will continue 1 week. Number 11 will continue to April 19th. And council April 27th. We don't have a report from the director today, is that right, sir? Okay, you have a brief report? Why don't you go ahead, sir?
I'll be very brief. Michael LeGrand, Director of Planning. I just want to let the Planning Committee members know we had a very good meeting today with the UCLA and Chancellor Jean Block regarding how they can participate through their research and their branding of their research, working with Los Angeles. Some of the areas they're looking at are biomedical research, job creation, as well as patents that they do through the university for private companies, and really developing incubators to help grow our local economy. They've also been through their last school, have been very helpful with us in looking at different ways to utilize our streets rather than just moving traffic. So we had a very productive meeting, and in times where we're trying to do more with less in city government, having the universities such as UCLA and also USC step up and really assist us in being able to, rather than just hire consultants to do a lot of the research work that we depend on for good planning decisions, being able to utilize the university system to help us not only grow our staff, but grow the amount of analysis that goes into the different policies we bring before this committee. So we're happy to have that conversation with them. The other thing I'd like to highlight to you is we also had a very good meeting last week with the Green LA Coalition, talking about issues of sustainability in the city and the health element, and looking at our general plan for an area to analyze health impacts and how land use and health play off each other, and how strong land use decisions can actually help for a healthy economy, but also healthy lifestyle. And so we'll continue those discussions with those members of that group, as well as our general population as we go forward. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, sir. Now, in reviewing these cards, number 10, although we continued, I see quite a few cards on 10. That's been continued. But out of courtesy to those who made the trip here, if you feel compelled to speak, you can speak once we get to that item. But if you don't, we'll just continue it. So just by show of hands, who feels compelled to speak on item number 10? If not, you can come back when it's rescheduled. Okay, I just want to make sure that I took care of that. All right. So Roberto, that takes us back to what?
Item number 4, council members, which is the proposed community care facilities ordinance.
Okay, now, just before we do that, item 6, we still have, I do want to take up item 6 real quick,
Okay.
because I believe that one, we can move faster.
Okay, so item 6, council members, is a city attorney report relative to a development agreement for the Columbia Square complex in CD 13, and it's for 189 condominiums and 11 townhomes, and as well as 125 hotel rooms.
So we can have the report from the planning staff?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Henry Chu of the Planning Department. To the left of me is Blake Lamb. What's before you is a 15-year development agreement for the Columbia Square project between the City of Los Angeles and the applicant PPD Gower 1. The Columbia Square project is located in the Hollywood Community Plan. And in August of 2010, the City Council approved all the requested entitlements associated with the Columbia Square project, and right now what's before you is the development agreement since it required additional review time. It should be noted that planning staff worked closely with the applicant, and the city attorney did review the development agreement. The project has received tremendous support from the community, including the council office, and it provides several benefits to both the community and the city overall. And I'd like to hand this off to Blake Lamb to highlight some of the benefits this project provides.
Thank you. Henry Blake Lamb with Planning Department. Good afternoon. What's most notable about this development agreement is that it has allowed the city the opportunity to negotiate a series of public benefits that will specifically address community concerns in Hollywood. Through a series of meetings, the benefits were negotiated by the Planning Department, by Council District 13, the Community Redevelopment Agency, as well as the property developer. We also considered issues from the local community as we worked together to create a series of benefits that we feel enhance the development site as well as the greater Hollywood area, providing opportunities for spin-off effects into the neighborhood. A few of the highlights of this development agreement before you today include a $400,000 contribution to Streetscape Improvements for the areas just beyond the project site, ensuring that not only would the project site itself have enhanced streetscape, but that also those improvements extend into the greater neighborhood, providing an incentive and benefit for existing and future developments in the area. The developer has agreed to provide up to $2.2 million for the creation of affordable housing in the Hollywood CRA project area, an approximately $475,000 transportation demand management plan for year 1 of the project, $100,000 to the Los Angeles Community College Workforce Development Program, and $35,000 to the Hollywood Cap Park. There are many other benefits which are detailed in the development agreement that's before you today. Thank you very much, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Any questions from my colleagues on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment. To call up Doug Haynes and then Wayne Spindler. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Haynes. I want to point out a few things. First, it states in the agenda that no community impact statement was submitted. That's incorrect. The Hollywood Studio District Neighborhood Council submitted an impact statement in opposition to this development agreement. They said 7 years is more than adequate. They're in opposition to the current project without additional parking. Also, when this went before the City Planning Commission, Kelly Bernard, the former planning deputy for CD13, said that 10 years is more than adequate for this project as a development agreement. This is a major precedent for Hollywood. My understanding is this is the first development agreement in the Hollywood area. Only in the past has it been downtown. So the concerns we have are several. Number one, on what Blake said about the public benefits, $2.2 million for affordable housing. That's essentially 4.5 units of affordable housing. That's nothing, and it's insignificant. The $475,000 for neighborhood traffic impacts, the Paseo Plaza project agreed to put up $900,000, so $475,000 is really ridiculous for a project on this scale. Keep in mind that the environmental studies showed that they only addressed first 4 neighborhood segments, street segments. 75% of those were significantly impacted without any hope of mitigation. Of the intersections, 7 would be impacted without any hope of any mitigation, in addition to the 13 overall impacted. This is a huge project, but what concerns us most about this is 15 years means that the next city council member will have no say in this project. That's why we're advocating something more reasonable. 12 years is a 3-term for a city council member. Let him have an opportunity to have some input on what happens on this significant site. Also, nothing's been done since this has been approved by council back in August. It's just a derelict site right now, and I don't think anything will be done because this property applicant, Area Property Partners, has never developed anything to my knowledge. They just flip properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spindler? Wayne Spindler?
We have a very bad real estate market, and what are we going to do with Hollywood? We're going to add hundreds of thousands of more square feet of condominiums, which aren't going to sell. You're going to have retail space that's not going to be rented. You're going to have more and more and more of this development money, which I thought the city was going to dissolve the CRA and take it over and eliminate it and hide it from Jerry Brown. Now we're back in business again. As soon as Jerry Brown decides to go after you, you'd be right back again doing what you did in all the other meetings you had with CRA. Nobody in the community, as you call it, wants this project. Want nothing to do with any of this stuff. We got a real estate market first that needs to resolve itself. Where is it going? Projections are it's going to go down another 20%. Now, if you're going to invest now and build on those parameters with the rising oil costs, is going to be rising utility costs, is going to be rising costs in construction. So you're going to have to base this project on one thing. Do you build today because it's cheaper to build today, or do you wait and build later? You have no analysis of anything what I'm talking about, because none of you have ever ran a company, none of you have ever developed a project, none of you have ever done anything in the private sector to understand what I'm saying. It's like Chinese. I could be up here like that woman on the internet, bong, bong, bing, bong, bong, and it'd be the same thing. You wouldn't know what the hell I'm talking about. You guys are just going to ram this stuff through. These projects are going to sit vacant. In CD5, you go down Havenhurst from Ventura Boulevard, which you were going to, you tabled another project that you're going to allow being built there to overdevelop that area. You got 3 vacant lots just within a square block of developers, just like these guys that had these big ideas. They sit vacant for 8, 9, 10 years of blight. That's what you're risking here. You need to put the brakes on this stuff and analyze the fiscal impacts first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spindler. Next speaker, Nicole Shahanian. And then we'll have Ron Miller. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Nicole Shahanian with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Hollywood Chamber, which represents nearly 1,000 businesses in the Hollywood area, I'm here to show our strong support for the Columbia Square project. The project will provide Hollywood with an innovative mixed-use site that simultaneously preserves a historic property that has played such an important role in the Hollywood history. The Chamber is particularly pleased with the opportunity for commercial office space that this project provides. As you may know, there's a real need for new office space to be built in Hollywood. We have very few Class A office buildings, as we've lost a lot of office space due to conversions to residential. In fact, there's not been a new office building erected in Hollywood in the last 30 years, with the exception of the Technicolor building, which was fully occupied by that firm. Additionally, we urge the Council to approve the applicant's request that the project have the full 15 years for completion. The Chamber strongly encourages you to approve this project, and we look forward to bringing it to Hollywood. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Miller. Then we have Edgar Kalisian.
Good afternoon, Councilman. I'm Ron Miller with the LA Orange County Building Construction Trades, and we were just downstairs, or just over in the other building a couple hours ago for a $1 billion project that's going to put plenty of people to work, but there's no amount of work right now that can happen fast enough this is a good quality project, and talked to the developer. They're ready to go with the first phase, and it's going to enhance the neighborhood and give a lot of jobs out, good middle-class jobs to the 140,000 construction people that I represent. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Edgar Clayton.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members. Edgar Kaladian with Paul Hastings here on behalf of the applicant PPD Gower. First of all, I'd like to thank Planning Department staff and the council office for working very closely with us and the community to form and develop a project that is supported by the community. At your recommendation, the City Council certified the project's EIR and approved the entitlements in July of 2010. The only item in front of you here today is the development agreement, which provides the city significant community benefits. At the last hearing, in addition to labor support, Hollywood Heritage and a significant number of community members appeared and supported the project. The development agreement does provide a significant number of community benefits to the project. It is a great project for the city, and the only item, the city has already certified the EIR. Some of the issues that were raised are not relevant today. Today, we are asking you to recommend to the City Council to execute a development agreement for the project to help make the project a reality and get a lot of Angelinos to work. We are available to answer any questions that you may have and ask for your support today.
Any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, thank you, sir. And our final speaker, Marcel Porras.
Good afternoon, Marcel Porras, Senior Planning and Economic Development Deputy for Council President Garcetti. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Council President and support the project, and ask that the committee recommend execution of the development agreement moving forward. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, seeing no other speakers, we can take the following actions. Given what's in front of us would be one. Do you have a question, Councilman?
I just have a question for the planning staff. What's the average length or term of a development agreement that the city enters into these types of projects?
Good afternoon, Blake Lamb with the Planning Department. Development agreements can span a variety of different lengths of time. This development agreement is for 15 years, which is a fairly standard amount of time for development agreements. I also wanted to highlight, there was a comment about other development agreements in the Hollywood Community Plan area. I just wanted to comment that there have been 3 development agreements approved in Hollywood, one for Hollywood and Highland, one for the Sunset and Vine development, which is the low-rise development on the northwest corner of Sunset and Vine, and then one for the KTLA Studios. That development agreement actually never had a project realized at the site, but that was the 3rd that was approved.
And what criteria, how do you come up with the amount of time that you would go with a development agreement? The term?
The project is very complex and it requires a 15-year development agreement.
I'm sorry, what was the answer?
The project is very complex. It involves the construction of a 28-story tower and a 17-story tower, and there's a preservation of 3 historic buildings. So because of the complexity, a 15-year agreement would be appropriate.
Thanks.
Okay, so if there are no other questions from my colleagues, we'll stop. All right. The following actions I would like to recommend to move this forward to the council would be 1, to approve the city attorney prepared ordinance authorizing execution of a development agreement and between the city and PPD Gower LLC. 2, to adopt the December 10, 2009 development agreement findings of the Planning Commission. And 3, find that since certification of environmental impact report EIR number 2004-7171, EIR on July 20, 2010, there have been no changes to the project, and therefore no subsequent EIR and no supplement to EIR is required for the project. So given these 3 actions, we can move this forward. If I have a second. Okay, that'll be unanimous. That'll be the action of this committee. Thank you very much. That takes care of item number 6. Roberto, what's the next item?
The next item, council members, is item 4. which is the proposed ordinance to define community care facilities in the city.
Call the staff to come on up and give us a report.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, Alan Bell, Planning Department staff. I just wanted to make a very brief introduction of this ordinance before turning it over to the staff. This is an issue that the council has been grappling with for a very, very long time. Also, personally, this is something that the planning staff have been addressing since 1997 when we did a report in response to a motion from former council member Rudy Savornich. At that time, the council did not take action on the planning department report, and it didn't seem at that time that there was really any satisfactory way to address this very vexing particular issue. 3 years ago, due to the leadership in Council District 12, Councilmember Greg Smith, he introduced a motion and there launched a very extensive outreach and planning effort. The planning staff made a particular point of listening to all sides of the question. There were multiple hearings before the Planning Commission. We understand that this is a very emotional issue. This is an issue that is troubling. It is very complex. But we think that the result of the past 3 years is an ordinance that is fair. We think it is even-handed, that it is balanced. We believe that this ordinance maintains and improves access to housing for people with disabilities while enacting new provisions designed to protect the quality of life in low-density residential zoned neighborhoods in a manner consistent with the housing element in the city's general plan. The ordinance achieves this balance by fully implementing the state's Community Care Facilities Act, and that is a first because we have not implemented this ordinance, this state law, since its enactment more than 25 years ago. In addition, the ordinance addresses the unintended consequences of a change in the definition of family that was enacted in 2006 that literally makes it difficult to enforce the current prohibition against boarding houses. And let it be clear, a boarding house, by definition, is a multifamily use, and they are prohibited accordingly in single-family zoning districts. The proposed ordinance is absolutely lawful and non-discriminatory. It does not target any specific population group. Rather, the proposed ordinance addresses a use of land, boarding and rooming houses that have been prohibited in single-family zones for decades, but that only due to a lack of clarity in the regulations make enforcement more challenging and difficult. Accordingly, the new ordinance significantly strengthens the city's ability to enforce existing zoning laws. Finally, the proposed ordinance benefits from recent changes in the legal landscape, specifically a new key state attorney general opinion, and then also recent court cases surrounding the Newport Beach ordinance. With that introduction, I want to turn it over to Tom Rockle, Planning Department staff, who will be making a presentation. And then also with us today is Deputy City Attorney Amy Brothers, who will also be making a presentation on the legal aspects of this particular proposed ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Tom Rothwell, Planning Department staff. I'm here to present the Community Care Facilities Ordinance. This ordinance before you today proposes to accomplish two goals. One, it's to provide clear guidelines for the state-licensed community care facilities to be in compliance with state law. And the second goal is to provide a better distinction between residential and non-residential uses that are particularly important in our single-family neighborhoods. By way of background, in 2007, Councilmember Smith directed the Planning Department to research the ordinances of other California cities that regulate sober living homes. He also directed the planning staff to draft an ordinance to regulate sober living homes. After researching this complex issue, planning staff determined that the laws created by these other cities possibly excluding the city of Newport Beach, which is under litigation at the moment, that these ordinances were discriminatory because they created zoning regulations for sober living homes that were more restricted than other similar uses. Since persons recovering from addictions are considered disabled under the Americans with Disabilities Act, restricting these homes is in direct conflict with that act. As part of our first goal to regulate the state-licensed community care facilities, the ordinance will distinguish between those facilities serving 6 and fewer residents and 7 or more residents. Although state law preempts the city from regulating the smaller ones any differently than any other single-family home, it does provide the city some latitude in regulating the larger community care facilities. As such, we are proposing that the smaller, licensed community care facilities be allowed in all zones that permit single-family dwellings. We're also proposing that the larger licensed facilities be allowed in all zones that permit single-family dwellings, as long as they meet certain performance standards such as density, parking, nighttime lighting, and nuisance abatement. I want to note the significance of these regulations as a key step in removing barriers to housing for the disabled in Los Angeles. Since 1973, as Alan previously mentioned, the city has not been in compliance with state law, requiring that we treat licensed facilities as we would any other single-family house. And because our code has never included these uses, variances have been required of them. By making the smaller facilities by right and the larger facilities public benefits, we have removed time-consuming, expensive, and unnecessary public review from the implementation of these types of facilities. Now I would like to briefly discuss the second goal, and that of providing a better distinction between families and boarding houses so that we can clarify the city's existing ban on boarding houses in our single-family and duplex neighborhoods. By modifying our definitions of boarding house and family, we will be categorizing an unlicensed group home as a boarding house once a second lease in that unit has been established. Families will be defined as a single housekeeping unit under no more than one lease, where the residents decide on who lives in the unit as opposed to a property manager or an owner. Since boarding houses already exist in our code, this change simply clarifies our definitions and does not change policy, but provides something quantifiable for enforcement against non-conforming uses. That concludes my initial presentation. And any questions?
In the process of reviewing and going through this language, how many community meetings or public discussions occurred regarding the ordinance?
Many. We've had many community workshops, we've had meetings, we've gone out to the communities, all different neighborhoods. We've met with providers and neighborhoods on individual basis whenever was requested. I would say over 25 meetings.
Over 25 meetings?
I would say that.
Since 2007?
Yes.
Okay. And planning commission as well?
Yes, the planning commission, when this first went to the planning commission, the commission created a subcommittee that focused directly on this issue, so the commission was directly involved in the creation of this ordinance.
And the planning commission's recommendations have been folded into the languages before this committee, correct?
Well, of that subcommittee, yes, but the commission did not take an action on the ordinance.
They did not take an action on the ordinance? Okay, and how long was that public comment period?
How long was the public comment period? At
that time in planning commission?
We kept it open until everybody spoke.
1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours?
We had 3 hearings. I would say 2 hours at both hearings, and then one was a shorter one.
So close to 5 hours of public hearings have been allowed by the process in which stakeholders were able to participate. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from staff on this item? Seeing no questions, any questions of staff? Or do you want to wait till after public comment? It's up to you.
Well, actually, let me just, while it's on my mind right now, if I can.
Okay, please.
One particular issue, in the staff report, there was a proposal to define correctional or penal institutions to create a differentiation between those institutions and family as well, so that you don't have the parolee home problem. But did that recommendation make its way into what's before us today?
No, that portion of the ordinance that went to the second commission hearing was removed and is not incorporated in the ordinance before you.
Why?
There were some outstanding legal issues, primarily focused on juveniles who live in homes, and we were defining a penal institution as more than one person on parole or probation living in a home that would have required a conditional use permit. That was our original proposal, but it was we found that it would be very difficult to implement, given that there could be more than 2 children or youths living in one house. That would therefore require them to get a conditional use permit. It seemed overly onerous. We're going to come back and examine the issue at a later date.
Okay.
I mean, we are going to proceed with an ordinance to address that issue, and it'll be going to the planning commission very shortly. There are just so many outstanding issues with that given the time frame, we didn't want to hold up this particular ordinance to resolve those issues, but we will be following up with an ordinance specifically on parolee homes and submitting that language to the planning commission.
Okay. So there hasn't been any decision made by either by staff or anyone else to not proceed with that differentiation. No. It's just that we still have to work out how it would apply for, I suppose it could apply to an actual family of 2 parents and multiple children then who had...
Right. As proposed, it might have required a conditional use permit. In that situation, we want to make sure that that wouldn't be the case.
We just want to make sure we get it right before we send it to the commission.
This is an especially important issue for me. I know it is for many of my colleagues, and so I don't want that to get left behind, even if we proceed on other issues today.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. In terms of, and just for the general understanding is, the state is a higher jurisdiction, and as state entities, because I know I've struggled with this in my district, where there are agencies and or programs that land in our neighborhoods that are state-sponsored, state-driven by state law, and we have very little authority to impact those entities in our neighborhoods as well. Would that be accurate?
Yes, if you're referring to the state licensed facilities, we don't have much latitude in regulating them.
Okay, so I just want to put that on the record, because I get asked, well, how can you let this happen? Why are they there? And it's just hard for us to move those entities when they are state licensed and state sponsored.
All right, the state does pose a distancing requirement on community care facilities. That's done by the state. There's a 300-foot distancing requirement from one community care facility to another. And that's done on the state side, and that's already been done.
Well, thank you. With these, seeing no other questions from my colleagues, moving to the public comment phase of this. Sir?
Yes, I can introduce yourself. Yes, Alan Bell, planning department staff. A key part of the presentation is from the city attorney's office, Deputy City Attorney Andy Brothers. So I would encourage the committee to let her also speak, particularly because so much is involved in litigation and a key part of the team in drafting up this ordinance.
Please, have the city attorney come forward.
Good afternoon. Amy Brothers, Deputy City Attorney. I'm just going to be very brief because I imagine you'll want to hear Tom's and my comments after the public have spoken. So just quickly, I want to emphasize that this ordinance is not meant to be a sea change in our zoning code. It's meant to tighten up the definitions of family and boarding house so that our existing code may be enforced more efficiently. And as Alan pointed out, for almost the past 100 years, we've prohibited commercial enterprises in the low-density residential zones. Boarding house uses are considered a commercial use and are not generally authorized in the R1 and R2 zones. That doesn't change. with this ordinance. Alan referred to the 2003 AG opinion. Basically, it reiterates that by continuing to prohibit commercial and non-residential uses from low-density residential zones, we can focus on the legitimate goals of preserving the residential, stable, non-transient character of low-density residential neighborhoods. And I'd like to talk a bit about the definition of family. Tom mentioned that we've now got a new definition of single housekeeping unit, and this is to re-emphasize that a single housekeeping unit operates like a traditional family, but where there is a lease, all the adults are under one lease. That has created a bit of controversy, and I want to advise the Commission that, like our proposed ordinance today, other cities have definitions of single housekeeping unit which also emphasize the non-transient, permanent, stable nature of families. By requiring those to come under one lease and to choose to live with each other, we believe we're doing that. The cities who are similar to, or have definitions similar to what we're proposing include the City of Orange, Hermosa Beach, Pasadena, Oxnard, Oakland. The proposed one lease requirement is an objective way to echo the same characteristics of a family who intends to live together on a permanent basis. Similarly, with the definition of boarding house, a very common definition, which is similar to ours, is that 3 or more rooms are rented to individuals under separate lease agreements. And those cities are Pasadena, City of Orange, Fontana, Murrieta, Napa, Lompoc. It's a common definition. And finally, our definitions of single housekeeping unit and the one lease requirement are very similar to that of Newport Beach. Newport Beach has a new ordinance. It has been under attack in litigation, and they have withstood constitutional challenges which allege that the definition was vague. The Newport Beach definition was upheld at last notice. As I mentioned, I'll be here for questions after public comment, and I can answer any questions that you have right now.
Any questions, colleagues? Okay, then I believe after the public comment, we'll have more questions. So that being said, I'll be calling you up by name. Please give us your name and address.
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
If I might just make one comment on the public comment.
Okay.
There has been, on this particular issue, there have been some activists who have utilized the public comment card to publicize the names and addresses of people who've spoken. And so I just want to make it clear to the public who's about to speak that the Brown Act does not require disclosure of home addresses. If they wish to come up and identify themselves in whatever way is necessary to allow you to call them to the mic, that is permitted by the Brown Act. And so although it's our practice to ask for people's addresses, I do just want to make sure that perhaps the city attorney will confirm for me that it's not mandated by law that anyone disclose their address when they come here to speak.
You push a bit, Mr. Brown?
That is correct.
Okay, okay. All right. So that being said, I'd like to call up the following persons, and Mr. Clerk, can we bring it down to 1 minute? We have a healthy stack here. We'll be here all night, I think, if we allow the 2. So we'll go with 1 minute. And many of you have written eloquent letters. Can you please look at your letters, and if there's the main point you'd like to make, emphasize that point, because I hate to have you go through the letter and realize your initial or your most important assertions were not heard. So just want to make sure that you're aware of the time. So when you come to the microphone, look to your right. There's a clock there, and if you can time yourself, we appreciate that very much. So our first speaker, Patsy Carter. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and fellow residents. I live in a neighborhood which has certainly had its challenges with nuisances. And we have fought drug dealers, drug houses, absentee landlords. You all know about absentee landlords who don't care for their properties, and liquor stores. And we've done it with the help of our council district, our senior leads, and our fellow residents. So I'm certainly empathetic with this proposed ordinance. But I will tell you, the notice has been inadequate. I will tell you that many of my neighbors who would love to have been here today know nothing about the consequences to their years of hard work developing housing where they could have law-abiding people come in and live. They can preserve old, big houses. They have stabilized my neighborhood. And I think there are parts of this ordinance that make sense, but I will tell you the one that does not make sense, because we all know who've been in the fight that the heart of any ordinance is compliance and enforcement, and making a predetermined group sign up for a residence in a home. There will be no compliance except by law-abiding people and people who don't have the money to work around it. And God knows the city of LA does not have the resources for the enforcement.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Beverly Kenworthy. And then I believe it's Maggie Badger. So Beverly Kenworthy and then Maggie Badger, I believe.
Good afternoon, council members. Beverly Kenworthy. I work with the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, and the reason I'm here today is that the LA Chamber of Commerce has a joint project with the Los Angeles, United Way of Greater Los Angeles called Home for Good, which is the result of the Business Leaders Task Force on homelessness. The plan seeks to end chronic and veteran homelessness. Unfortunately, the City of Los Angeles and the County of Los Angeles is the homeless capital of the nation. I'd like to point out one thing in particular and make a correction on page 5 of your report. Incorrectly states that Home for Good is the mayor's plan. It isn't. We appreciate the mayor's support, but it is not his policy. And also that we definitely have a lot of concerns on how this will impact Home for Good, and that is yet to be determined, even though it's stated in your report that it won't have an impact. So we have not determined that, and we are looking to engage in this issue in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. And then after Maggie would have Anne Lehner Marquette.
Maggie Fainer, 2631 Orchard Avenue. I've been very active in many things. I serve on the Design Review Board in my community. I've come through the neighborhood councils, and I'm chair of Plan Check NC. But today I'm here as a resident of North University Park in the 8th District. And we have our experiences with all forms of boarding houses and community care facilities. I support this ordinance. It provides tools to manage those that need more management. Many of us don't have the support system, and we have to create our own families. Well, that's taken care of by the under 6 and by the group home requirement that you decide that you are a family and you are a group and you sign your lease accordingly. It cuts down on the transiency of having people come in and out. Many people in our area have made a living cutting up the houses and the homes in our area and providing boarding houses. They're badly managed, and we need this ordinance to help us with that. And the only item I would, if I could have 1 minute, is concentration.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That breaks if we could have some protection on concentration.
Thank you very much.
This is Annie Marquette with Public Counsel.
We support the provisions of the ordinance that increase opportunities to cite licensed community care and AOD programs. However, we remain concerned that the definitions of single housekeeping unit and boarding house may have the unintended consequence of creating barriers to the development of permanent supportive housing, or PSH. PSH is permanent housing with on-site services tailored to the needs of people who have been homeless. PSH is highly effective and a centerpiece of the United Way's Home for Good plan. PSH residents have individual leases so that they may live independently, take responsibility for their own rent, and remain housed for a long period of time. It isn't a boarding house, they aren't transients. As a result, under the proposed ordinance, PSH would not be possible in low-density zones. Licensed community care facilities are not a substitute for PSH. The state legislature recognized this in exempting PSH from licensing requirements in order to ensure that people with disabilities can live in the least restrictive setting possible. The proposed ordinance may also make it difficult for a homeowner to take in renters in order to make ends meet, a scenario increasingly common in this economic climate. Please consider delaying action on this until a more thorough assessment of how this affects our city's homeless population has been done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jeff Christensen, and then we'll have Salvador Wilson, and then Julia Robinson Shimizu.
Hello, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Only the community care portion of this proposed ordinance.
Just for the record, your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff Christensen,
Okay.
and I'm a proud resident of Venice, California. Only the community care portion of this proposed ordinance pertaining to licensed programs brings the municipal code into conformance with state law. The boarding house provisions are not only discriminatory, they violate existing state and federal law. Years of case law state that persons with disabilities living in group homes are to be considered families by their local governments. In addition to violating the fair housing laws, a proposed redefinition of family violates state case law. City of Santa Barbara versus Adamson is a 1980 California Supreme Court ruling that states that local governments cannot define family differently for non-related persons as for related persons. We would like to propose a real solution. If the city wants an ordinance that restricts boarding houses and doesn't violate federal fair housing laws, then specifically exclude housing for persons with disabilities and other populations covered by fair housing laws and definitions in their definition of boarding house. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Salvador Wilson, Julia Robinson, and then Suzanne Shemitsky.
Yeah, my name is Salvador Wilson. I'm a resident of Los Angeles and a voter since I was old enough to vote. It's kind of ironic that we start this meeting with new members and talking about conflicts of interest and non-biased opinions. But I'm asking you, Mr. Reyes, are you able to vote on this ordinance? Aren't you a co-author of this ordinance? And if so, I'm asking you to recuse yourself from the voting process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Julia Robinson Shimizu. I live in North Hollywood, and I represent NAMI San Fernando Valley. NAMI San Fernando Valley is an affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we believe strongly that this is not the answer. I'm a parent of one child. My adult son lives with schizophrenia. At this moment, he lives at home. At one point in his life, he will need supportive housing. I don't believe the ordinance as written will serve his needs. This, as it is written, is a forfeiture of our responsibility towards some of our neediest citizens. The effect will be to reduce housing for individuals clutching at the very bottom rung of the social ladder. It will lead to greater homelessness. NAMI San Fernando Valley.
Thank you. Can you finish up that thought?
We support delaying the proposal until there is more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm Suzanne Schmidtke. I live in Valley Village. I'm here on behalf of NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness of San Fernando Valley. I'm a former president, I'm a family member as Julia, and I'm terribly concerned about this proposal, which I think does not provide answers or solutions. On the contrary, I essentially ditto what Julia said, but I do want to underscore that what it does is reduces housing for people who already are challenged in terms of finding housing, and will undoubtedly, no doubt, increase the number of homeless people. Anybody who lives near North Hollywood Park know how full that is of homeless people on account of none being available. So what I would like to repeat is that we cannot support the ordinance as it is, but would like to establish a dialogue with all the stakeholders so that we can come up with something decent that balances the needs of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schmitzky. Sharon Cummins, Jack Allen, and James Stenson. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Sharon Cummins, Mar Vista, California, 90066. And my community, I'm here representing my community council. I'm first vice chair. I'm also co-chair of the Planning and Land Use Committee. We support this ordinance. We are also part of the West Side Regional Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, which has a supermajority supporting this ordinance. And we'd respectfully request that you forward it for action to the City Council. I think the amount of public dialogue on it has been more than sufficient, and it's time to move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Council. I'm Jack Allen, President of the Pacific Palisades Preservation Association. We strongly support this ordinance, but we would like to see a separation requirement put in it because the state separation requirement only applies to licensed homes. It doesn't apply to unlicensed homes. And the courts have upheld this separation on the basis that it guarantees that residential treatment facilities will, in fact, be in the community rather than in the neighborhoods, completely made up of group homes that recreate institutional environment. And the primary objective in treating persons who suffer from mental handicaps, including alcoholism and drug addiction, is to place them in residential neighborhoods so that they can feel that they are normal people. But if the facilities are concentrated in a neighborhood, then the diversity is absent, which is essential to their recovery. We would like to have that separation requirement put in to apply to all community care facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is James Stenson. I'm with the Asian American Drug Abuse Program. We strongly oppose this ordinance as it is written at this time. We feel that the council needs to do more research and study how its impact on homelessness, as said before. And I just want to concur with the rest of the speakers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Cindy Pickle, Andrew Halpern, and Rebecca Lobo, please come on up. And Kelly Lord. You're welcome to form a line behind the speaker. That's fine, too. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Cindy Pickle. I live in Reseda. I'm a stakeholder there. I live on a street that had a sober living home that burned down. The owner rebuilt the house into a 6-bedroom, 12-bed facility on a corner. We have now parking issues. We have secondhand smoke issues with the immediate neighbors. And we also have an intersection that is extremely hard to get through now because of the number of 12-passenger, 15-passenger vehicles that are blocking our views. The problem that we have there now that has put me here is the gentleman has bought the adjoining property, torn down the house, built a new property in an old 3-bedroom house that's going to accommodate as many people as the first house. He has told neighbors, or his workers have told neighbors, that they plan to join these two properties. This is an R1 neighborhood. He has made 2 clinical buildings that no longer look like our neighborhood, and this is right across the street from a school. Somebody has to regulate this. Somebody has to do that, regulate it, not only for the residents of the neighborhood, but for the residents of the facilities. This man is asking for $1,100 a month. I don't think any homeless person is going to be affected by this house.
Thank you, Ms. Pickle. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to me.
Andrew Halpern, then Rebecca Lobo.
Thank you all for taking the time to hear us speak. I'm going to make life easier for everyone, say ditto to a lot of that. So I'm Andrew Halpern. I live in 90272, My daughter Grace is 12. She learned about the birds and the bees when she was 10 by activities in our backyard, overheard from our neighbor who operates a commercial boarding house, and it's run by a non-resident out-of-state person. Skipping ahead, no one here wants to increase homelessness in our city. While various groups claim that the ordinance will create homelessness, the planning department and city attorney have been presented with no significant evidence to support these claims. Advocates for homelessness, disabled, and those who rely on supportive housing have had more than enough time to produce a list of homes which could be affected. They have not done so. The law that saves low-density neighborhoods across the city from extinction cannot be derailed without evidence that the threat of homelessness is real. The ordinance is well balanced. We urge you to support it, and we thank you for taking the time to do it.
Thank you, sir. Rebecca Lobel, and we'll have Callie Lord.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Lobel. I'm with LA Coalition for Neighborhoods, which is a nonprofit organization which supports the city's proposed ordinance. We represent LA residents from every council district and have worked to garner support for the ordinance from 26 neighborhood councils. The ordinance is well balanced. It establishes that licensed community care facilities of all kinds serving many different types of residents, including the disabled and the elderly, have the right to exist in all zones. It allows unrelated individuals to come together to live as families in self-selected relationships, to live together in group housing in all zones. It allows property owners to rent out rooms in their homes to whomever they like in all zones, so long as they are on one joint oral lease, hardly a significant burden to the property owner. It allows all types of boarding houses to exist in R3 and higher zones. Finally, it protects low-density neighborhoods from being erased by providing building and safety with the tools it needs to enforce the existing zoning code. We urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Callie Lord.
Good afternoon. I come before you as part of Northridge East Neighborhood Council.
Can you give us your name, please?
Kelly Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to say that the board took a vote and did support this ordinance. So we'd like to encourage this to be moved towards the City Council, and thank you again for your time and attention.
Thank you, sir. Pam Inaba, Gail Hayes, John O. Whitaker, Jr., and Laura Myers. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Pam Inaba. I'm the chair of the Los Angeles County Client Coalition. The members of the steering committee of the LA County Client Coalition would like to oppose this proposed ordinance that would restrict housing opportunities for homeless and formerly homeless people with disabilities within the city of Los Angeles. The definitions and redefinitions would effectively limit any home with more than one lease to restricted density RD zones. Many of our members have in the past and are now living in permanent supportive housing. This type of shared housing has allowed people like us to live independently. We who live in shared housing have an average length of residency that is the same as any other tenant. Under the Mental Health Services Act housing program, every tenant of shared supportive housing must have his or her own lease, a core component of permanent supportive housing. This ordinance would cause more homelessness, which would not only be a terrible hardship for people with disabilities, including people with mental disabilities, but would incur increased costs to the city in hospital, ambulance, jail, police, and other services. The proposed ordinance was drafted without formal input from the state, the county,
yes.
disability rights advocates, supportive housing developers, legal and advocacy organizations acting on behalf of the people with mental illness or consumers. Thank you very much.
Gail Hayes, John Whitaker, and Laura Myers.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Excuse me, Gail Hayes, and I live directly behind a sober living facility in Los Angeles, and I'm here representing only myself to tell you my personal experiences, which have been similar to as others have said. For me, one of the biggest problems has been the noise of having up to 12 paid short-term residents come and go and constantly congregate in the backyard, around a pool area, or even inside the home with all the doors and windows open. So from morning until night, we have noise. It's very much commensurate with running a business, not what you would expect from a family. We've also had heavy secondhand smoke coming through our backyard into our home to the point where we have to close all the doors and the windows in the back of our home and just stay inside. And we've also had big problems with barking dogs. We file complaints with the Department of Animal Services. It quiets down for a while, but then it starts again, and we have to repeat the process. So the ordinance seems very fair and balanced to me, and I would urge you to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, ladies. My name is John O. Whitaker Jr. I am a former sober living manager. I am a certified addiction treatment counselor. I work with Tarzana Treatment Center. I represent about 1,500 to 2,000 voices of advocates for treatment and recovery through AWARE, always working toward advancing recovery environments. The first recorded sober living happened on June 10th, 1935 in Akron, Ohio, when the original founders of Alcoholics Anonymous got together. For the past 75 years, homes to benefit addicts and alcoholics have been necessary and a part of treatment and recovery. Nobody on this council, and not very many people here, are certified addiction treatment counselors, are members of, have credentials to be able to change the way in which clinical purposes of the sober livings have been. The R1 zone is where the original sober living was, and R1 zones, R2 zones are necessary for the continuance of a positive sober living environment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Laura Myers.
Hi, I'm Laura Myers. I'm here representing the United Neighborhoods of the historic Arlington Heights, West Adams, and Jefferson Park Community Neighborhood Council. This is not about sober living per se. It is about perhaps the clinical parts of it. Why can't that be licensed? We have been facing in our community and the adjacent areas the impossibility of getting enforcement from building and safety when we had a home for people coming from other countries to give birth to little citizens. Here for 30 days, then gone. We had a home with 41 sex offenders. We have, still have, because building safety won't enforce, an 8-bedroom mansion that's actually been changed to 31 bedrooms with 19 parking spaces. But what is it? We support this. It's a family by affinity. The lease component we talked about at length. It's actually very easy to do. You just ask people to sign a single lease. Personally, for what I do for a living, very quickly, we've been doing this for 10 years, managing 6 historic properties with groups of young people. They sign a single lease. It's easy to do. Thank you.
Yvonne Johnson, Paul Dumont, and Janet Turner. Please come on up. And Christina Spitz. Yvonne Johnson, Paul Dumont, Janet Turner. Good afternoon, ma'am.
My name is Yvonne Johnson, live in the San Fernando Valley District. They have problems, this city.
Can you speak into the microphone? That's all right.
Okay, the people are complaining about addicts living in their neighborhood. Well, how would they like if the addicts are out there with shopping carts sleeping in their front yards and everything? So we need places to keep people like myself off the streets and from robbing them, and etc.
Thank you. Paul Dumont.
Good afternoon. Paul Dumont. I'm a recovering alcoholic and a sober housing advocate from the San Fernando Valley. I had a comment for Mr. Krikorian first. With respect to the activists posting addresses from public speaker information cards, if you took a look at that blog site, they posted a list of our sober living homes online and encouraged the NIMBYs to shine a light on our discriminate against us because we made a decision to stop drinking and using drugs. So I feel that they're activists that shined a light on us in tit for tat. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. We gave them a dose of their own medicine and posted a list of their addresses just like they posted a list of ours. So that said, we can discuss that later in private if you'd like. I have a lot of information, but we're only here to discuss whether or not the council has authority to consider this. And my position is that the council lacks authority to consider this matter. It failed the planning commission vote, and it was not initiated by council motion. It was initiated by the director of planning. There's no charter or municipal code provisions for you guys to consider the matter, and I would like you to concede exhaustion of administrative remedies with respect to that, or seek advice from the city attorney on that, and let me know so that we can proceed to have a judge order you not to consider.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Janet Turner?
Janet Turner, Chair of Pacific Palisades Community Council, and here today also representing the Western Regional Alliance of Councils, 12 neighborhood and community councils from West Los Angeles. You have letters from WRAC and PPCC on your table today. We are here to tell you that we strongly support this ordinance and beg you to please recommend it today. In our neighborhoods, quiet residential areas have turned chaotic by illegal boarding homes. These same areas have also been the residence of true sober living homes that we welcome. Sober living and community care facility homes where people do live as a family have been living peacefully in our areas. So again, we believe that this ordinance has a great definition that provides an intelligent and appropriate definition for boarding homes, and that it maintains the stable character of our neighborhoods. And we ask you to keep that in mind.
Thank you very much. Barbara Cohn, Jennifer Mallory. Like to come out, ma'am? Give us your name.
I believe my name was called, but not
What's your
called
name?
other names. My name is Christina Spitz.
Yes, please.
Okay, Christina Spitz. I am Vice President of Pacific Palisades Residents Association and Chair of the Land Use Committee for Pacific Palisades Community Council. I want to echo the comments of the previous speaker, Janet Turner, and urge you to bring this ordinance, or recommend this ordinance to the full council. We fully support it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Barbara Cohn, Jennifer Mallory. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Barbara Cohn, Pacific Palisades Residents Association President and member of the Pacific Palisades Community Council. I also urge you to support the ordinance. We believe that the ordinance is the city's appropriate response to public health, welfare, and safety concerns, and we urge you to recommend it and pass it on to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker.
Hello, Jennifer Mallory, Pacific Palisades. I'm here today as a representative of the Pacific Palisades Community Council in support of the ordinance. We've delivered a letter for your record. I'm sure, as you're well aware, that I certainly believe that Plum has the authority to consider this matter. Legislation is exempt from any requirement to exhaust remedies, so I believe we can move forward. Here in the Pacific Palisades, the council firmly believes that the city can regulate use and impose zoning restrictions on boarding houses. Claims that community care facilities will be shut down and that housing will be inadequate are specious. The ordinance allows by right residency in those homes that have 6 or less residents. Because there is no public notice, there is no public hearing relative to determination of a public benefit. Homes that are operating under a public benefit are also allowed by right. And we very much, we support and urge you to move this ordinance forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie Brochu, Maria Fisk, Rachel Filston, and Jim Robinson. That's Leslie Brochu, Maria Fisk, Rachel Filston, and Jim Robinson. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm here to urge you to pass this ordinance. I'm not.
Give us your name, please.
I'm sorry. My name's Leslie Brochu, Granada Hills. I'm here today to ask you to pass this ordinance. I'm not against sober living, but I am against 30 people living in a 4-bedroom house next door to me. A year and a half ago, several of us in Granada Hills met with our senior lead officer regarding 3 nuisance houses in our neighborhood. That progressed into a meeting with CD12, the city attorney, building and safety. On April 27th, 2010, LAPD went out with building and safety and investigated all 3 houses, wrote up 27 violations. In July of 2010, the city attorney's office issued orders to comply. Today, 2 of those houses are still in existence. 1 house was only closed due to foreclosure. The nuisance abatement laws do not work in these cases. We need this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you much. Maria Fisk. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Fisk, Old Granada Hills Residents Group. I'm representing, and I'm also part of the Granada Hills South Neighborhood Council, who have both supported this ordinance. Just a little brief summary. You have been given a packet, many letters from our organization and myself as to the rationale and support of this ordinance. We would be specifically concerned about the removal of the corrections and penal institutions specification. We would like to have that re-upped. We can't wait. This is a very serious issue within this ordinance other cities have addressed. I would like to demonstrate why we need this ordinance. In the 3 homes in Granada Hills, we've had 85 calls to LAFD. We've had 3 arrests with 1 family. We've had a bomb squad deployment. There are 13 to 30 residents living at $600 a month each, so that adds up to $18,000. Before you are images of what we've had to endure. The Chase Street house in North Hills has also had 80 calls to police and 30 to 47 residents.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is not about us. It's also about the poor residents who live in these homes and need to be regulated.
Thank you very much. Rachel Pilson.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Feldstein, and I'm a landowner. I'm a homeowner and a landlord in 90019, and I'm here to tell you this is a bad idea. The decision to change the definition of family, what are we thinking? This is not the Beaver Cleaver generation. There's a lot between family and boarding house, and we need to open our eyes and understand that people do need separate leases. We do want to end homelessness. We do want to provide services to disabled people, and changing the definition of family so that we can discriminate is really, really a bad idea. I understand that the assistant district attorney said that this ordinance can help us enforce current ordinances. If we have current ordinances, we don't need a discriminating ordinance to enforce current ordinances. Again, I just want to say this is a bad idea. We need to be able to support people with disabilities and provide them housing, get them off the streets. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Jim Robinson.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Robinson. I'm a student housing landlord, and I live at 27 St. James Park in the University Park neighborhood just north of USC. I understand the concerns of homeowners fed up with neighbors' intolerable behavior, sober or not, but this ordinance now goes way beyond its original stated intent. We've heard quite a few horror stories today, and I'll bet they're all true, but they also sound like they're all illegal already, and you can't make any law work if you don't enforce it, that one or the one we're talking about today. If this passes, it will outlaw thousands of living arrangements that are currently legal, from students sharing a house or apartment, to 2 low-income families sharing a home, to homeowners trying to make mortgage payments by renting out a couple of rooms. And we've heard about 3 years of hearings, but most of us hadn't a clue of how widespread the effects are, way beyond what the description of this ordinance indicates.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We have Tessa Bessica, and I like the way you ran that. It helps a lot. Jerry Rubin and Heather Shields. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Tessa Bessica, and I live in Van Nuys. I'm an alcoholic, an addict, and I was homeless, and I'm a veteran. I'm glad that I got sober before they developed these sober living houses, because I doubt I'd be sober if I lived in one. I live down the street from one of these. They have no curfew, no in-house programs, no city oversight, much less inspections. The police were called at least once a week. They have sidewalk gatherings at all times of the day and night, and I saw drug deals going down. They fill the people in there like sardines. There are facilities that are better than this, such as New Horizons, that are licensed by the city, they're regulated, they're inspected. They have in-house programs, and they have 6 people maximum, and that's not a bedroom, that's for the whole house. These are what people in recovery need, not just expensive flop houses. I'm a 3rd-generation Valley girl. I've seen a lot less single-family housing areas in the Valley. We need to preserve those for what they are, single-family use, and we don't need to cram these dives into them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jerry Rubin, Heather Shields. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Jerry Lubin. I live at 984 South Carmelina Avenue, Los Angeles, 90049 since 1969. I'm a trained city planner, a life member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and since 1959 I have specialized in health and social services planning. What I find objectionable about this particular law is that it is contrary to Prop 63 passed in 2004, the Mental Health Services Act, under which for shared housing each individual must own his or her own lease. And this in effect discriminates against this protected group and makes them unable to live, as many of them do, in R1, R2 zones. It restricts them to more multiple family zones.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
There are going to be lawsuits unless, and I think the planning department has a tough, complex problem, but it must recognize the difference and the requirements of individuals who suffer
we have to be fair.
mental health, a brain disease.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Heather Shields and Shannon.
I'm Heather Shields, Reseda. Good afternoon, council members. I'm here to reiterate, I live in the same neighborhood where the two sober living houses are in Reseda, across the street from the neighborhood elementary school. Please let me say that I do believe that recovering addicts do need a second chance, and they need the right care in order to do so. My brother, an alcoholic, spent the last 6 months of his life in a sober living house in NoHo, and for the last 3 months leading up to his death, he was actively drinking. And all those living in the house, including the manager, had no idea. My brother died in his car, parked right outside of the sober living home in a neighborhood street in North Hollywood. His esophagus ruptured. He was found by a neighbor. His blood alcohol level at the time of death was 0.37. I know how hard recovery is, and I watched my brother work his program for 4 years before he relapsed, and he never recovered from that relapse. I believe that all recovering addicts deserve a chance, but not at the expense of our children and our neighborhood. Please vote to support this ordinance.
Thank you, ma'am. Shannon? Is Shannon here? David A. Sachs and Valerie Collins. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Shannon, and I am an addict. I just celebrated 16 years clean and Narcotics Anonymous. And I am a homeowner. I have 2 young children. I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. In 2001, I bought a home in Reseda, and 4 doors down was this house. It was a 1950s house, 4 bedrooms. It burned down. It was a sober living. It was a terrifying fire for our neighborhood. The owner rebuilt this 7-bedroom, 4-bath home. It has 13 recovering men. All of a sudden, he bought the house next door. Now he owns a whole block. He's built the same exact house. We're going to have 25 drug addict men across the street from an elementary school. And this shows how close these homes are together. When I try and add on to my garage as a single family resident because I want to build a little guest house, building and safety tells me no. It's a single family resident, and I can't turn my garage into a guest home to help me pay my mortgage. And I strongly request that you support this ordinance because I'm a recovering addict and I don't want these men around my children. It's not regulated, it's not licensed.
Thank you, ma'am. David Sachs and Valerie Collins.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is David Sachs. I'm from Northridge, California. And I've been in our fine city 44 years, and in spite of all the problems, it's a great place to live. I just have some questions. I don't know what the ordinance says. I only heard about this a couple of days ago. We have a sober living home just a few doors down from us. And I have a question. How are they supposed to integrate into middle-class neighborhoods when their values are not ours? They need real treatment, and they need to be maybe this type. I'm only talking about alcohol and drugs. In a more industrialized area, so they can't terrorize the neighborhood in case they want to not mend their ways and continue their criminal ways. They see our neighborhood, at least this particular house, and the people that are there, the cops are there regularly, as a neighborhood to prey on, not a neighborhood to integrate into. Property values are going down. Our taxes support them, not really us. And also, no notice was given about this event, except a couple of days ago.
Thank you
very much.
Valerie Collins. Hi, good afternoon.
I live next door to the sober living house that David's speaking about. And coming home from work one day, there had to be 14 cop cars there and they had them all handcuffed. Who are these people that have to be handcuffed? Recovering addicts have to be handcuffed? There was 20 of them, all against my fence. And also, this house I've lived there since I was a child. Since I was a little girl, I've lived in this house. My parents built it in '58. And I know that for a fact that house is only a 3-bedroom house. Where do they put these 22 people? Hello? And you don't have any regulation as to how many children can live in something like this? The woman that came there had 2 babies, then she had another baby. Recently, that baby's only 5 months old. And then there's a 13-year-old, I know for sure. But when they brought these 20 people out, there were others. So I don't understand. But the quality of my life has been to the point where I am always watching my back. And it's very uncomfortable. So we don't know who these people are, why they had to come, the police for parolees. I thought these were recovering addicts. I'm sorry, one more time. When the EMTs came, I asked them, do we have anything to be concerned about in here? He says, there's no way there is a license to
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Phyllis Cotto, Dr. Dennis W. O'Brien, Sharon Rapport. Then Peggy Burgess, or Burgess. Is Phyllis Cotto here? Dr. Dennis O'Brien.
Good afternoon, council members. I would like to say that...
Can you give us your name, please?
Yes, Dr. Dennis O'Brien, mental health professional, special counsel to several governmental entities. I would like to say that I have not seen enough evidence to support what's being proposed at the table today. I think that having limitations on things can sometimes be productive, but I would like to see a study made that shows evidence of the garbage and there was a very negative image that I saw portrayed about the mental health community. And even though I know that there are incidences that do occur, I don't think that it's the vast majority of places. And so I would just like to say that I would like to see further studies made. I don't think that there's enough evidence to back up what's being said, and
thank you, Doctor.
I oppose it at this point.
Thank you, Doctor, very much. Sharon Rapport and Peggy Burgess, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Rapport. I'm with the Corporation for Supportive Housing. We're a national nonprofit with the mission of preventing and ending homelessness. We agree with the comments made earlier by Public Counsel and are concerned about the definitions of boarding home and single housekeeping unit. We think they're overbroad and will unintentionally cause people to become homeless who are now living in shared permanent supportive housing. Tenants of permanent supportive housing have their own lease with all the rights and responsibilities of tenancy under landlord-tenant law. They have the right to choose their own housemates. They reside in housing as long as any other renter, as a previous speaker reported. PSH is a proven cost-effective way of addressing chronic homelessness and has been linked to improve neighborhood property values and safety. It is not a commercial enterprise. Courts have recognized PSH as a less restrictive permanent alternative to licensed facility care. And the Department of Mental Health is currently funding permanent supportive housing for approximately 180 shared permanent supportive housing residents.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Peggy Burgess. After Ms. Burgess, we have William Ledger, I believe, or Ledger.
Good afternoon. Peggy Burgess, North Hills. Gentlemen, my neighborhood has been terrorized for years by an SL-owned house run by Paul Dumont. Per LAPD, he had 30 to 45 tenants packed into that 5-bedroom home. Twice, he's been forced to close down to avoid abatement, most recently in January. This is not the only home run by Paul Dumont, and all have been or are in the process of being abated. The CCFO is not perfect. It's not nearly restrictive enough, but it is a start. Unlicensed, unregulated group homes do not belong in single-family zones. We've been waiting since 2007 for this. So, to protect our neighborhoods, our children, and our quality of life, I urge you, pass this ordinance now without further delay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm William Legere. I'm from the Los Angeles Klein Coalition. I'm the acting treasurer and also the historian. What I've been hearing about this ordinance is NIMBYism, not in my backyard. I don't agree with this ordinance. One thing, it will increase homelessness instead of decrease homelessness. I know what happened, and I know about the smoke and the drug use, but don't say all is bad. It will keep homelessness. And it's also, to quote Jay Lubin, it's also against the Mental Health Services Act, which stresses recovery. And what we're hearing from the people is NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Well, what will happen if they say no blacks can stay around here, or no Hispanics can stay around here? Not in my backyard? And this is wrong.
Thank you, sir. Nina Royale, Cooper Halpern, Barbara Boyd, and Stephanie Hardy. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Nina Royale, Safety Chairman, San Tahunga Neighborhood Council. That's where I'm from. And I have a letter supporting the ordinance from the San Tahunga Neighborhood Council that I will give to the clerk. I have a family member that had experience with an unlicensed, unregulated, sober living house. They charge an exorbitant rate without supplying services, but take their disability or general relief funds. These homes must come under an ordinance that protects both the patients, because if they have a problem, they're patients. They're not just tenants, they're patients. As well as the quality of life for neighborhoods. Mr. Dumas opposes regulations because he's a businessman, and that is his proprietor of these homes. It will cut hugely into his huge profits. So I am urging you on behalf of the San Tahunga community and all the communities of Los Angeles to please pass this ordinance.
Thank you, ma'am. Cooper Halpern and Barbara Boyd, and then we'll have Suboni Mong. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Cooper Halpern. I've been given permission by Gia Thompson, the author of this email, to read it to you today. She lives next door to a boarding house in her residential neighborhood. I would love to come give my support, but the time doesn't work. I just got my wallet and phone stolen out of my car in my driveway within a half hour of me being inside. Never been robbed in 17 years, and the speeding is driving me crazy. It's like a trashy hotel in our beautiful neighborhood, and no one is regulating if they are even sober. They could be driving under the influence with our children. I thought you can't have a business in a residential area. Please let me know if there's another day or I can come or time I can give them my ear. Gia Thompson.
Thank you, sir. Barbara Boyd.
Good afternoon, Chairman Reyes, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to the Planning Department for doing tremendous research to bring options to Los Angeles that we can implement, and for doing extensive outreach. We've attended countless meetings. I represent to you today Westside Neighborhood Council and the Westwood South of Santa Monica Boulevard Homeowners Association. We strongly support this ordinance. I'm not going to read you all the reasons. Everyone has said them very clearly. I think, quite honestly, today, we have to admit that the credibility of the city's ability to enforce its zoning code is at stake. This is a major issue. You have homeowners, you have property owners who are asked to comply with zoning, and they do so out of respect for the city and out of fear for fining. We have numbers of commercial enterprises operating in single-family residential areas that are not in compliance. The ordinance that's proposed is a middle ground. Many people want to see it much stronger than it is being proposed here today. We should start with this middle ground. We should adopt it now. Enough is enough is what I'm hearing from this audience and from the situations that exist in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Stephanie Hardy, Simone Amon, and then we'll have Mary Harper. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Hardy, Director of Policy and Planning for Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. As the lead agency for LA City and County, our primary role is to coordinate the effective and efficient utilization of federal and local funding to provide services and housing to homeless people in LA. In our continuum, over 28,000 people, 70% of our homeless population sleep on our streets every night. Permanent supportive housing is the primary solution for our chronically homeless veterans, individuals, and families, and is the lack of this essential housing that's the main challenge for us in meeting our objective of preventing and ending homelessness. Federal resources are available to provide access to housing, but the use of federal funds often requires that the individual or the family household have a lease with the property owner. We're very concerned that this ordinance as proposed will reduce or eliminate many permanent housing options that currently exist for homeless individuals and families. It's imperative that we don't create additional barriers to the ability to use this federal funding.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us today here. My name is Siboney Monge. I am a property owner. I live on 7050 Bertrand Avenue. And I would like to say that since I've been attending the neighborhood meetings, 3 things have happened to my house. The one time is somebody turned over my trees. The next time someone put an envelope with trash inside with messages, which I took to the police department. The third time, on March 21st, my tires were slashed on the back of my car in the front of my home. There are the two sober living homes are one at the end of my block, right across from the elementary school. I believe that the American Disability Act applies only to a single individual, not to a group. I am always pro law-abiding citizens, and any help that the city can provide to assist in regulating all these money-making machines that people are benefiting from having people in need and making money off of it is illegal. There's plenty of industrial properties and commercial properties they can move to.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mary Harpel, and I'm here representing, I'm on the board of the National Alliance of Mental Illness in San Fernando Valley, and I'm also a member of the Los Angeles Client Coalition. There's a definition of transit in the ordinance, and according to a study by New York School of Law, people who live in supportive housing live 84% a year, 64% the next year. There's no formal input by state disability rights advocates or supporting people who actually build or maintain the homes. So homelessness is expensive, and this is going to displace perhaps hundreds, perhaps thousands of people, and it is expensive to the county taxpayers or city. One emergency call is $1,250 per night. And then just one quick thing. All these stories are anecdotal.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Ryan Spindler, Gail Evangelo, I apologize if I don't pronounce it correctly. Diane Rosen, please come on up.
Yes, first thing you have to do is you have to care about the homeowners, and you don't. You never did, you never do. And what this really is there's all kinds of things going on in the city with these homes that aren't right. Every house that's built has a certificate of occupancy. Every single place has a fire marshal requirement. You can go in with building and safety. You can enforce those two provisions alone and solve this problem. You don't even need this ordinance. But if you cared about the homeowners, if you really cared about the homeowners, you'd do what you did with the billboards. You'd go to the Senate, State of California, Bob Blumenfeld. You would draft an ordinance, make it statewide with everything included in it for the whole state. Get Redondo Beach involved, get all the cities involved, and have a uniform standard. Instead, you're going to piecemeal with Amy over here and Trutanich, and you're going to wind up getting the city sued. That's what I see. Thank you.
Gail, hi.
I love the way you say that. Gail Evangelidi. I'm with NAMI. I'm on the West Side Board of NAMI LA on their Board of Directors and also the California Board of Directors. And I'm here to say that I oppose the bill at the present. I do think you do need regulations and you do need licensing because there are too many board and cares that are atrocities, and they shouldn't be allowed to run as they are. But there are very many that are excellent and doing a great job. Right now, the MHSA funds have 39 units, 78 provides 78 housing residents, and those are doing very well. The Department of Mental Health also has 30 shared units, housing 180 people, and the list can go on. I'm not going to go into all that, but I think that you have to have housing, proper housing, that will help people so that they can improve their lives, especially those with mental illness. So I would like to see you table this for a bit, go back over some of those rules and regulations to make sure that they are adequate, and do close down the ones that are terrible because it doesn't do anybody any good.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Diane Rosen. I'm the chair of the Planning and Land Use Committee, the Encino Planning and Land Use Committee. I sent you all emails, and I have distributed our letter, which we won't go into. We support this ordinance. We have been to the meetings that the Planning Department has put out, which has been exceptional. They have done a great deal of work under very difficult circumstances. We urge that you move this forward as soon as possible. It may not be perfect, but it is very good, and I think we should move on it immediately. I'm only going to address one item, and that's the grandfathering. We need to bring everything into compliance and not grandfather some projects that do not fit. So that's what I have to say. I thank the Planning Department for their work, and I urge you to move this forward as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a few more cards. We have Monique Breyer, Kathy Dale Don, and our final speaker will be Sean Bayless from Councilmember Corrett's office. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Monique Breyer. I'm a real estate broker, lifelong resident of the San Fernando Valley, and a homeowner. I'm hearing a lot of talk today about discrimination against the various parties. The one group that hasn't been mentioned that is being discriminated against are the homeowners. We pay for everything with our property taxes, and I will tell you from the neighborhoods I live in, which are Tarzana and Woodland Hills, we have had repeated problems with sober living houses, group homes, flop houses, the criminality it brings in. By the way, one of the things when you say you don't want something in your backyard, we have people having sex with prostitutes in backyards in these group homes. So I think it's the homeowners who are being discriminated against, and I think from the standpoint of the city, this is destroying people's property values. They've worked hard to buy those homes. They don't deserve to have the city come and take them away or have criminals living next door when a woman, single-family mom, can't even convert her garage and it have 30 people next door.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'll make this quick. My name is Kathy Deladani, and I'm representing the Tarzana Neighborhood Council. I chair the land use. We are very supportive of this proposed ordinance. It's been difficult to get to this time at this point, but the staff has done an outstanding job, and we just urge you to say yes to it. Thank you.
Thank you. After Mr. Bayless, final speaker will be Phyllis Winger.
Sean Bales from Councilmember Paul Corrett's office. I will try to make this as quick as possible. Dear Chairman Reyes and members of Plum, we are extremely pleased that an ordinance regulating community care facilities and protecting our residential neighborhoods is finally before the City Council. We want to thank Councilmember Smith for his many years of dedicated effort in bringing this ordinance forward. In the spirit of protecting the many residential neighborhoods, and based on meetings with stakeholders, our office supports this ordinance. Also, we support amendments to the ordinance that would make it even stronger. Many of these suggestions originated with the Los Angeles Coalition, which has done an excellent job of advocacy on this issue. A few of those amendments or thoughts are that we support a clarification to the definition of dwelling unit to prevent corporations from installing boarding houses in low-density neighborhoods. This language is referred to as the alternative proposal in the LA Coalition, most notably dated February 1st, I do believe. We are seeking to prevent boarding homes but not prevent a homeowner from renting out a single room in their home, which many elderly homeowners do to help pay the bills, and many people do that to help. While it's difficult to support a costly private attorney general provision, we do support, however, Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety, Planning and Housing identify an enforcement team that the public be given a single point of contact for effective enforcement of the ordinance. Also, existing sober living homes are among the most problematic. We cannot support granting all existing homes non-conforming status to remain indefinitely. We ask that all facilities be required to register and comply with the new ordinance, but that existing facilities be given 12 months to find a new location should they not conform. We also request that the Director of Planning have the right to order a hearing on any application where the council office so requests, and require hearings for any location designed to house 50 or more persons. The impact of boarding houses and particularly sober living homes is extreme when they are located in close proximity to each other and to similar uses. We request that community care facilities be prohibited within 500 feet of any sensitive use and 500 feet from any other community care facility. These rules are consistent with adult entertainment and medical marijuana restrictions. And then lastly, secondhand smoke can go from a non-issue to a major issue for adjacent property owners when large numbers of occupants are crammed into a single home. As sober living homes oftentimes have many occupants, sometimes all heavy smokers, we ask that smoking in any location where it creates an impact on adjacent structures be prohibited. This provision is similar to the Newport Beach rule. That's it. Thank you for your time and attention in this matter. And the council member looks forward to voting for this ordinance in council and continuing the important work.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Ms. Winger, our final speaker. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, council members. Councilman Reyes, Councilman Huizar, and Councilmember Krikorian. I'm Phyllis Winger, representing Councilman Greg Smith, the maker of the motion that led to the ordinance that you are discussing this afternoon. I think it is clear from the testimony you've heard earlier that something is needed to regulate the unregulated, problematic group homes. This ordinance, while not perfect, goes a long way to at least giving the first good step. The definitions that it provides brings a level of clarity to the code that was we never had before, and it provides the best approach for controlling the various group home situations. Again, the councilman recognizes it's not perfect, but it is a great first step to get us started going along the way, to give us the tools that we need to be able to regulate the unregulated group homes and protect the single-family areas. The folks living near the homes that are problematic have suffered a great deal and need relief. Fully expecting that there will be additions and modifications to the ordinance down the line, the councilman asked, though, that it not be held up. It is critical that something is in place to start controlling these, and he would ask that you would support it today and send it on to council for final approval. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Renner. Colleagues, any questions from yourselves we could address at this time? We'll have staff come to the microphone. Given the issues that have been raised, when we look at this tension, if you will, when we look at enforcement, and it's been stated that if you had enforcement, most of these problems would go away. If you were to implement the existing laws, the issues that are being raised, if we had enforcement, we wouldn't have a need for this ordinance. Can you speak to that assertion?
As Amy Brothers, for the record, as I had mentioned earlier, our existing zoning code does not allow businesses to operate in residential zones. However, our boarding house definition, which is in essence what most of these businesses are operating as, is from 1956. 1956. It needs to be brought up to date. What we have today and what we had in 1956, has changed a bit. As Alan Bell had mentioned earlier, we have a new definition of family from 2006. At the time, we were concerned about our old definition of family, which actually violated state privacy laws. In overabundance of caution, we enacted a definition of family which inhibits us a bit in terms of enforcing. And that is why we are suggesting today that we have a more comprehensive definition of family as well. And these should provide the tools we need for enforcement, or better tools, I should say.
So these updated definitions, what I hear from some of the speakers is that there's an inadvertent impact economically to those who are for lack of a better word, the good guys in quotes, the folks who are helping to clean up the neighborhood, folks who do have boarders, folks who come in and rent. Mixed University, I've seen examples where you have visiting professors, you have family members in very nice facilities, and you don't have those problems. Do they get inadvertently penalized under these new rules?
The proposal does not preclude anybody from renting out rooms in their house. The specifics of it state that you are entitled to one lease. So as long as you're a homeowner, you can lease out 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, as long as it's to one housekeeping unit. So as long as there is a group of people on one lease, that is perfectly acceptable with the ordinance we're proposing today. What it's precluding is multiple leases, 3 different bedrooms with 3 different leases. So it's really that simple. We're saying that those 3 separate leases constitute a boarding house. When you rent out 1, 2 bedrooms to one other family unit, that is still within the parameters of our single housekeeping unit. So this would not preclude the scenario you just mentioned.
Okay. There are other questions I have, and it's been a long day, and I do want to sit down with the staff and look at some of the issues that were brought forward. My inclination, Councilmember, and I'm not sure if you have any more questions. My inclination is to continue this for 1 week, to look at this in a little bit more focused fashion. I've heard some new information I have not heard before, and get a chance to speak with our attorneys. And give my colleagues a chance to also respond, because now that it's in Plum Committee level, the radar has expanded, it's multiplied, and there's going to be more concern. More of my colleagues will be concerned with this issue, and it would give them time to get their questions answered as well. Councilor Corcoran, what I was just offering is I continue this 1 week, given some of the questions that have been raised, some of the scenarios that have been put forth, and allow me to drill down to some of the issues that were raised, and perhaps by next week we can have another discussion, hopefully clear answers. If you have any questions of our staff now, I'd be more than happy to address them and put them on the table.
Well, Mr. Reyes, I've got a long list of questions just from the comments that were raised from some of the public speakers. Right. But I would be prepared, based on what I know so far, to move forward, because I think that while there are probably areas that still need to be discussed, and there are certainly, I think, in my view, areas where we can make this a stronger and better ordinance. I just don't think we should let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and we ought to be moving forward with this with the understanding that legislation is always a work in progress and we can always improve it later. But that being said, I think a one-week continuance is not going to deter that progress at all, and in order to get some of these questions resolved, have a more thorough look at it between now and then so that we can present a more thorough and robust report to council, to our colleagues, that will answer some of their questions as well. I think that makes good sense, and so I'd be prepared to go right now in support of this ordinance, but I think a week delay is not going to deter that progress at all.
Councilman, any sentiments?
That's fine with me, and same sentiments. Just let me say off the bat that I do want to commend Mr. Smith's office for moving forward on this. I've had issues with several types of special living homes in all parts of my district, and although I've been told that we've been preempted from the state in addressing the 6 beds and less, those areas that we could bring up to date and get some more clarity, I fully support. I don't see, however, and as a person who's been very supportive of homeless issues, I don't see how this will increase homelessness. There was some very broad statements being made in public comment. If anybody could get better information on that, please send it to my office, but I don't see how this ordinance as written will increase homelessness. I think it is better defining how and when these homes are and where they're put in the city. I've had a lot of issues with these, and I'm glad we're addressing them, at least within the parameters that have been given to us by the state. I'm fully prepared to send this to council, but I respect the chair's decision to further clarify some issues in committee.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to close public comment. We'll give me a chance to answer some of or to address some of the issues and concerns I've heard over public hearing. And we'll see this in committee next week. And unless there are any other questions, or observations.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, but if I may, just because we have a lot of people here who have a lot of experience and knowledge on all sides of this issue, if I could, I'd just like to state a couple of issues that I'm especially concerned about. I thought, like Mr. Weezer did, that's a good idea to try to draw some greater input from the public that I would welcome directly to me at any time between now and next week. So if I could just run through a quick list. One, I'd like to understand more about the conflict with the state mental health issue that was raised by one speaker. I'd like to know if there's a way that legitimate student housing needs in the area of colleges can be met without deterring from the effectiveness of the prohibitory language. Can we draw any distinctions based on whether or not these facilities are actually providing any kind of service or support at all? Because there are certainly those who are not. Is that a way to do that? And I'd like to understand what current nuisance law provides in the way of enforcement that is inadequate in addressing some of these problems. Also, someone mentioned that there's a federal requirement that each person have a lease in order to provide federal funding, and I'm wondering why that need couldn't be met simply by putting the name of the individual on the single lease that we're calling for under this draft ordinance. It could be a single lease that has multiple tenants listed, and I would assume that that would satisfy that requirement. And then finally, what would be the need, how can we best address the issue of that was raised by Mr. Kretz's staff of, while not allowing necessarily grandfathering, providing some transitional accommodation to bring people into compliance or give them an opportunity to move.
Okay, and in terms of just the basic, most general questions I'd like to put forth, and I'll have other questions later, but what does this do for owner-occupied properties where the owner needs to rent a room or two to get through economically? Does rent control or tenant relocation compensation apply in single-family properties and boarding house units? So in a week we can drill down to these issues. So I want to just repeat that this is will be closed to public comment. So it'll be just a discussion the next time we meet. And so we'll continue this 1 week. And I want to thank the staff for their hard work, for the city attorney and planning for getting to this level. I know it hasn't been easy, and we need to keep pushing forward. So thank you very much. And I want to thank the courtesy of the audience. I know this is an emotional issue, and I appreciate the conduct that we witnessed today. Thank you very much. So that concludes this item. Roberto, any other items?
Public comment, Councilman.
Okay, anybody here for public comment? Please come to the microphone. Anyone for public comment? Do we have any public comment cards? I do have a couple of cards. Doug Haynes and Wayne Spindler.
Hi, my name is Doug Haynes. I'm with the East Hollywood Neighborhood Council, and I was asked to speak briefly today on everyone's favorite topic, which is medical marijuana dispensaries. I came before this committee back in July, and I mentioned the dispensary that we have operating in our residential zone in a non-conforming building. It's immediately adjacent to single-family homes, and it's within 1,000 feet of an elementary school. After many calls, it was finally raided by Metro Narcotics on November 16th. On November 17th, it reopened, and it's been operating ever since. The owner has been bragging that he's made already $1 million this year off that dispensary. The city attorney's office put in an evict order in January, and it isn't just us in Hollywood. The problem we're having is that as soon as you'll shut them down, eventually this will be shut down, it's just going to pop up in another location. And I know, Councilman Weezer, you're having the same problem because I've spoken to Mike Larson in the Eagle Rock Neighborhood Council that you have dozens opening. And if I could, just instead of 1 minute, just I want to speak a little bit more on this. What we really need and what we're asking for is that the DEA come in, because that's the only thing these illegal dispensaries are afraid of, because federal laws are effective. The problem we're having is that the DEA agents have said that they're specifically told not to come into Los Angeles because our mayor and members of the city council, quite frankly, do not want them to come in. So in Hollywood, we're having a terrible problem with this. We just had another open a few blocks from where I live. So I would ask that the city council consider that option, because West Hollywood just had a raid on their clinics, and they're not exactly against marijuana dispensary, and they include the DEA and LAPD in that raid.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Next speaker, it's 2 minutes, correct?
Yeah, Wayne Spindler. I want to talk about the city of Encino and the way it's being ripped apart by developers, starting on Ventura Boulevard between Havenhurst and Balboa Boulevard. There's a building project that originally was a Tuscan-styled design, and they changed it to a cubicle design, the most ugly piece of crap you've ever seen, and they've been allowed to build it. And I go to the Encino Neighborhood Council, which they don't give a crap, that's why they're not here. But it was supposed, one of the projects is on the agenda today. That one wasn't, but that other one is the school. They're going to be taking a school and building a large garage and putting a playground all the way on the top of the garage. Then we have the 3 vacant lots, all the way in Havenhurst, Otsego, Havenhurst, Gerald, Havenhurst, and Ventura. So when you combine all of this blight and overdevelopment, you are changing the landscape of this area. which has many, many large homes. And also this matter today affects it because, for example, one of the homes that I'm referring to, it has 11 rooms in it on a third of an acre lot. And if you allow that property to be turned into one of these drug rehabs, you could get about 25 people easily into that place. So does a homeowner, does a property owner that has that property like me, do we make a decision to just throw the towel in and just go ahead and set up one of these places and move out of the city? That's what you're going to be doing with your policies. You are going to drive out people that are going to restore these homes, that are going to keep and preserve the neighborhoods. They're going to rent these places out, make good money on the rent, and they're going to move their families and their incomes out of the city of Los Angeles. That's the landscape you're changing. You're turning this place, city of Los Angeles, into an absentee landlord haven, and you need to stop it. Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't quite understand about the leasing, where you can have so many people. I guess if you have one lease, then anybody, a whole bunch of people can live there? See, because I'm a single mother too, and I pay my taxes, and I know I'm paying for them to live next door to me. And I know that they have to have, some kind of guidance in their life. But, my quality of life has got to be something too.
Well, let me do this. This is for public comment. You can address your question on the side. What we have done is continue the item. We'll have more discussion next week.
Okay, and are we going to be able to come to that one next week?
Yes, we'll be able to come, but we will not open the microphone for the public. We have a discussion between the staff and the committee.
But you receive emails from us, Kevin?
Yes. Okay, thank you. See no other comment? This committee